Hey guys, Rick Taylor here with KS USA. Today we're going to talk about how to service your LEV Si dropper post. Okay, so some of the basic tools that we're going to need to service KS dropper we'll go over here. If there are additional or specific or specialty tools for your particular model that we're going to go over, we'll discuss those in further detail a little bit later on in the video. So you want to start with a good quality biodegradable degreaser. We tend to like the Simple Green cleaners here. You can dilute them down to whatever ratio you want. They wash away easily, and they're not caustic or damaging. So a good degreaser. For lubrication, we recommend either the KS Post Paste, or if you don't have that available, the Slick Oleum is basically the same formula. It's designed specifically for suspension use, more specifically air oil systems, so it's a really good lubrication to use. We don't recommend using automotive grease because they tend to be a higher viscosity and can cause poor performance of your dropper if you use those. A pair of soft jaws so that you can hold the seat post. The one that we have here happens to have a round clamp hole in it, but if you can't find one of these in your local market, you can also do a V-block, which a lot of times you can get those from Amazon or from a local hardware store, a machine shop supply. Those kind of places have them. And essentially you just need something that you're going to be able to clamp and hold the tube. If you don't have access to that, don't panic. You can also use the bicycle frame to hold the post in place while we unthread the collar. We'll go over that in a little more detail later. Utility knife, we generally will use this just to help us remove the guide bushings. So these are handy to have. If you don't have one, you can do it by using your fingernail, but I'd recommend if you can find a utility knife, definitely grab that. A set of Allen wrenches. So you're going to need from a 6 down to a 1.5 millimeter set. So they can either be a T-handle like this, or you can have one of the little pocket folding ones work great too. But just make sure they're good quality so you don't end up rounding or stripping out any of the bolts. Last would be a strap wrench. And the strap wrench is basically to remove the collar. You'll need these on nearly all models of KS dropper, with the exception of the A12 Integra and the Rage I. So those two will use a little different system that we'll talk about later. But the strap wrench you can get from most hardware stores, and they're generally used for fitting pipes that you don't want to do damage to. So if they're a chrome finish or something, these allow you to grab and turn pipe without damaging the surface. So local hardware stores, and again, this is called a strap wrench. And then we definitely like to use a microfiber towel for cleaning and the internal parts and everything. These work really well with the degreaser. They tend to take all of the debris off of your post. So you can get these through most hardware stores, or if you have a Costco in your area, they do their Kirkland brand of towels that work really well. So first step is to go ahead and use our soft jaws. And we're going to clamp this up. Again, if you don't have soft jaws, you could clamp the post in the frame, and you can use your strap wrench to unscrew it here. But we're going to go ahead and use the soft jaws because we have them, and it's going to be a lot easier to show you. So one thing that we didn't show in the tools initially is an adjustable wrench. So we'll just use our adjustable wrench and adjust it so it fits the flats here on the end cap, and we'll go ahead and unscrew that. Okay, I'm going to flip this around. If you're working on your post at home, you don't have to flip this. I'm going to do it to make it easier for you to see. And we're going to take our strap wrench, and we're going to grab this seal collar. We're going to unscrew it a few turns. We can go ahead and finish unthreading this. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and push that up, And we're going to need to grab a hold of the compression rod. We have the soft jaws here, or V-block works. If you don't have either one of those, you can use a rag like this in the vise, or you can use the strap on your strap wrench to put in the vise this way and tighten down, and that'll put pressure on the compression rod without damaging it. Be really careful. If you put it in your vise with the jaws, you can score this, damage it, and then it'll leak oil and won't function properly, and that won't be a good thing. So just be really careful however you decide to clamp that in. Okay, and then you can either grab it on the flats here. The torque is a lot lower here on the compression rod, so you can just adjust it to fit the outside of the body here. Loosen it up. Now I put once I get it all the way unthreaded, I put a little bit of side load on it, and that'll help me draw out the push rod. And I just take that whole assembly and set it aside. And I take the bottom out bumper, set it aside. Set our V-blocks. Now we're going to pull this apart, and we're going to do this kind of slowly so we don't lose parts. Okay. So we're going to take the mass tube and set it aside. There's an upper little bushing here. That's just a band bushing. Set it aside. We're going to take the utility knife, and there's a POM bushing here. We're going to take that out, and then there's a metallic bushing below it. I'm going to take that out, and that's on all three sides. So we'll take those out. Then we're going to take our seal head assembly, slide it off, set it aside, and we'll go ahead and clean the shaft there. And then if you've got any issues with your cartridge, now would be the time to replace it. If you have any squish there, or if it was leaking oil or just worn out from long service life, now would be the time to replace it. If you are not replacing it, one thing you may want to do at this point in time is check the air pressure in it while we're doing the servicing of it. And so just taking the clamp off so we can get to the air valve. Okay, so then I'm going to take the rag and make sure that there's no dirt or debris around the valve head. And depending on the production year of your post, you could possibly have a cover here, or you may not have a cover. It's not critical that it has the cover or cap on it, because when the lower clamp fits on, it actually covers that. So don't worry about it if you don't have one on there. If you do have one, just a flathead screwdriver will remove it. Go ahead and put your air pump on. You hear we lost a little pressure there, so the gauge isn't going to read what was actually in there. You're always going to lose pressure out of the valve and into the hose. So don't panic if the pressure's low. It doesn't mean you have a leak. Okay, so we're going to air this up, and the sweet spot on these posts is about 175 to 200 psi. For a lighter weight rider, 175 is easier for them to compress. The return speed is slightly slower. 200 psi is going to yield you a faster return speed, but is a little bit more difficult to compress. Anything over 200 psi really doesn't give you any faster return, because it puts extra friction on the seals, and that actually works like a damper and slows the return speed down. So keep it under 200. 175 to 200 is recommended. Okay, and so with the pump, we're going to just go ahead and pump this up to whatever pressure we decide we're going to do. I'm going to do 180 in this one. And then if you're in the market for a pump, I would recommend one with a two-stage chuck. And what that does is, as you unthread this, it closes the air valve on the cartridge. So now when I unscrew it, that little hiss that you heard was only the air that's in the hose. You didn't lose any air out of here. Now, keep in mind that if you put the pump back on and you check your pressure, the pressure will be lower than what you left it at when you took the hose off, because when you put this on, air's leaving the cartridge and it's filling up this hose. So don't panic if you check it again and it's lower. That's going to happen because you're losing the air pressure here. What you want to go by when you set it is the pressure that was on the pump when you take it off. That'll be your operating pressure, not the pressure you see when you put the thing back on, okay? So whether you just re-inflated and topped off your cartridge, or you've got a new one that you're putting on, the next thing you can do is replace your air cap if you had one on your post. Okay. Now we're going to set this aside for a moment. We'll take our seal head. This has our wiper seal and our DU bushing in it. I'm just going to clean that. You can use a little bit of the degreaser. Get in there and get all the debris and the old grease out. I'm going to take a little bit of the grease, and there is a lip or cavity created between the two seals, and we're going to go ahead and fill that with the grease. That'll do two things. It'll pre-lube the seal so it's smoother when it rides up and down on the stanchion, but also it creates a water barrier so that moisture can't get down past and inside the post. So we'll put that on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean our guide pins. Now, one thing that I recommend is when you put these pins in, if you just put them in dry, well, this one's going to stay for us, but a lot of the time when you put a pin in dry, that one may have had a little bit of grease in the groove, the pin will pop back out. So I'd recommend to just put a little bit of grease in the groove before you put the pin in. Same thing here. And you can even smear a little bit over the top of it once you get it in. That's going to help retain the pin and not have it fall out. It won't be as fiddly for you to try to deal with putting everything back together. Kind of gives you an extra set of hands. Okay, so we'll set that aside for a minute. Now we're going to clean this band bushing. Set it aside. Next thing to clean up is our mass tube. And what I found the easiest is just to take the microfiber towel and the handle of your tool, whether it's screwdriver or Allen, and just go ahead and push as much as you can of the microfiber in. You can kind of twist and turn it and then pull it out and just sight down the tube. Look down in there and see if you see any debris or anything dirty still in there. Especially if you hold it up to the light, you can see if there's anything in there. Just keep wiping it till it's clean. And then I would take a little bit of the grease and put that down inside the mast. And again, make sure you have a little bit on the stanchion and a little bit on the bushings. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put one finger here, one finger on the other one, and a thumb here. That's going to hold all three in place. And we're just going to rotate this until we feel it start to drop in. And then what's important is once you get down to where those POM bushings are, you want to make sure you're holding them in and you're pushing slowly and gently so that they line up and don't pop out. If you force them with them popped out, you're going to damage those bushings. Okay? So the next thing you can do is you can just put a little thin film of grease on the band bushing, and we're going to just carefully walk that into the groove. I like to take the knife, not with the cutting edge, but with the side, and just gently push that in. Okay? You don't want to thread the collar down on there without that being seated, because you will damage that bushing. But get it in, and then you're going to just tighten it by hand. And then we'll take the degreaser on the towel and we'll clean that really good and make sure there's no grease on that surface. Next, we're going to put the bottom out bumper on. Okay, so now something to look at. If you happen to have these separate, well, you had your post apart, you have a push rod end cap, and you have the push rod. Push rod has a long side and a short side. The long side needs to go into the push rod. The short side goes into the post. So when you assemble it, it's long side into here, then into the actuator. If you assemble it the other way around, you're effectively going to make this longer. It'll hold the valve open and you'll wonder why your post doesn't work. So make sure that you put it with the long side towards the actuator. I also like to take a little bit of grease, put it on the outside of the push rod, and I also like to put a little bit on the end of the push rod end cap. We'll put that together. Double check and make sure you've got the bottom out bumper installed. This threads down. Then you tighten it hand tight. Now, this next thing is really important. We use the V blocks to clamp this in place. And if you don't listen to anything else in this video, listen to this. Take your wrench, put it on the end this way, not this way, just this way, and watch how far I turn this. So this is hand tight now. That's it. If you tighten more than that, this is a hollow shaft that threads in there. You'll shear that off. You'll break it. You'll probably get that part stuck in your cartridge. You'll have to get a new cartridge and a new actuator. So again, just past hand tight, just that little tiny turn so that it's snug. I'm going to slide this down a little bit and clamp it onto the mast. Okay, we can kind of pull that back. We're going to thread this one in. Sometimes the edges of this are a little sharp, so the rag can be your friend to help you get that threaded on there without cutting your finger on that sharp surface. Okay, now you can open this back up to the flats. And again, it just has to be snug. You don't have to overdo it. Those are aluminum parts. You don't want to break anything. Okay, now we're going to flip this around so you can see it more easily. Okay, take the strap wrench. Again, we clean this really good, so I'm just doing it again just to re-emphasize. Get that good and clean. Put the strap wrench on it. You're going to snug that up. And that's all you need to do. Okay, so before we put this back in the bike, let's give it a quick test to make sure it functions properly. You can put the Allen key through the actuator this way, but it's very important not to rock this either way because you will break the actuator. What I like to do is put this through, put my thumb on top, and you can see how I'm holding it. Okay, so this way I can just actuate it really easily that way and not put a side load on it. Okay, and so everything should be smooth and work properly. If you feel the return's a little slow, you can always add a little extra air pressure. If you feel that it's a little difficult to compress, you might try reducing the air pressure. And then last step is going to be to put our clamps back on and reassemble. Make sure that you follow the torque specifications on the clamp itself. And now would be a good time to put a little bit of anti-seize or grease on your clamps before you torque everything back down.